For this final part, we'll cover the UI of the client, which is relatively simple. We don't have that many forms, but to be fair, the basic Netflix app doesn't have too many forms either, so this isn't too different from the original. The one special thing we do here is use the layered toolbar for the UI, which I will discuss soon enough. CSS is used for the design. I'll introduce the applicable CSS incrementally when introducing a specific UI ID. I won't go over the entire CSS and will instead go back to it when introducing a specific UI ID. I will cover the generic concepts first though. We have only two constants in the CSS. The first is the include native feature, which should be on by default always. The second is a standard label gap between the label and the icon. I think 1mm is generally a good number here. We don't have too much in common between the forms at this level of the UI, so there is only one method in common. The init global toolbar method initializes the toolbar component when global toolbar is turned on, which is the default. We do two things here. We set the toolbar to use the layered mode. We do that by passing true to the toolbar constructor. Next, we set the UI ID of the toolbar to toolbar gradient, which we use to indicate the translucent gradient background to separate the toolbar from the content. The toolbar gradient is a gradient in black between 0.6 alpha to almost clear alpha. This creates a slight fade effect over the title area, so the title will still be visible if the image in the background has the same colors. Codename 1 doesn't currently support alpha gradients. As a solution, the CSS support generates an image of the gradient during build and uses that. The splash form is stupid simple. We just place the logo in the center of the form and initialize. There is only one thing to discuss here, and that's the source of the Netflix logo PNG file. All images are declared in the CSS under two dummy UI IDs, specifically image imports 1 and image imports 2. This just pulls all the images into the resource file so we can later make use of them. The source DPI is the reason we have two image import UI IDs. When source DPI is set to 0, it means we want the image imported as is, not as a multi-image, but rather as a single image. The logo is the only image where we're interested in a multi-image behavior. Since most images come from the server, we don't need many multi-images in the app. The home form is the main UI of the application, listing the content that the user can select from. It's a base form, which means the title of the form is overlaid on the content and it uses border layout. I'll skip to the bottom first. This class is created using a create method that returns the class instance. It accepts the content information as the argument to build the UI. The actual implementation of the layout is in the init method we see above. The init method creates the entire UI. It starts with the logo title we can see here. That matches the same image we see in the splash screen. That's mostly laziness on my part, but isn't too far off from the actual Netflix UI. By adding a command to the side menu, the hamburger menu appears automatically. I didn't want to go into the design and implementation of the side menu, so I left this effectively blank. I also added a search command, which is again blank since I didn't implement that. Technically, I just used that for the icon. I could have just used add material command to right bar, but that would have required a slightly longer line of code, so I chose this approach. The main UI has a logo image here, which is different from the background hero shot. Now you might be thinking, why not have the logo as a part of the background hero shot? Why do we need a separate image for the logo? Two reasons. We want the logo to appear above the play button exactly. If it's a part of the background image, we won't be able to tell where that is. We want the ability to scale the background and foreground image differently. In the background, we want a scale to fill so the UI will look good in all resolutions. For the foreground, we want a scale to fit behavior, so the logo text will always be visible regardless of the device resolution. We set the UID for the series logo. This impacts the following CSS. The margin and padding push the logo to the right location in the middle with the right amount of spacing, and the background is defined as transparent, so the background image will be visible through the logo. The play button looks like this. Again, most of the work is done in the CSS for the button. We use a 1.5mm round border with a gray background and black foreground for the text/icon. The background image comes dynamically from the server, so we can't set it from CSS. We create a box layout with the logo play button and the popular on Netflix label. We then set the background image dynamically using the style object. The lead UID is a special case with a dark gradient background. It's overlaid on the title image and needs that gradient to be visible on all image backgrounds. The tabs are set to appear at the bottom explicitly to avoid top Android style tabs. I could have defined this in the theme constants, but chose to do it in the code in this case. The lead UI is a special case with a dark gradient background. It's overlaid on the title image and needs that gradient to be visible on all image backgrounds. Each list below is created via the movie list method. They have a lead label, top, and reside within a scrollable container so we can scroll through them. Let's look at the movie list method. Here I create a box X container that's scrollable on the X-axis. Every element is a scalable image button that uses the thumb icon UID. When pressed, we show the details form. Finally, the tabs themselves are added to the bottom of the form. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this course and found it educational.